Hey folks, Rob from Drift Outfitters here. I used to get extremely cold while on the water and would keep me off during some prime seasons. But over the years, I've been able to develop a great system on how to keep myself warm, and it started with understanding of what made me cold on the water. As anglers, we have some unique conditions, being submerged in water, we have compression issues, we have conduction issues, and all sorts of things. So stick with us for this 4-part series on how to stay warm on the water and make the most of your colder months. Now, to stay warm out there, you have to understand what is making you cold. There are a number of factors that are fairly unique to fly fishing or fishing in general when you're wading. Now, those factors are compression, conduction, air exchange, the moisture that you create and that surrounds you, and also the material choices as well. So let's wade deeply into compression because that's one of the bigger factors and has some unique points within the wading world. Now, thermal layering or insulation needs a few things, and that's an airspace to exist. You need these air pockets within your insulation to trap your warm air and create that buffer between warm, your skin, and cold, the exterior of your waders, or interior of your waders. Now, when we start to talk about compression, we're talking about removing that insulation. So water pressure, as it hugs your legs, will squeeze out that air. So if you check this out right here, this is a standard puffy layer. If you go and squeeze this, all that puffy insulation is now, well, it's compressed, it's gone. So once you do get into the water and start wading deeper, you are actually going to lose that insulative qualities of your stuff. Now that goes for socks as well, but also the tightness of your boots and your socks and your stocking foot. So if you were into a pair of waders and you feel that your toes are actually pointing at the front of your waders and it's kind of bulging, if you feel that your socks are tight, we can guarantee you that those contact points where you feel the tightness, you're going to be the coldest there than anywhere else. And what's happening is that you've removed the insulation properties or the insulative qualities of your material by compressing it. You're now getting more conduction going from the outside of your stocking foot into your toes, going through the neoprene of your waders because you've now eliminated that insulation layer. And also you're cutting off your blood flow. So even on the very small scale of just having that light touch, that light bit of compression, you're cutting off blood circulation to that small area. Once that gets cold, that cold spreads and you'll continue getting colder and colder, causing you to either get off the water or having a very miserable day. So compression can be found elsewhere. Now, if you think about your outer layers that might be a little snug or too tight, if you have a puffy layer on below there, what's going to happen? It's going to compress that outer layer or that puffy layer, push out all the warm air and its ability to insulate after that. So that's where you can find compression as well. Fingers in your gloves. If your gloves are too tight, if the material is touching the end of your fingers, or it's too tight around the circumference of your fingers as well, you could be cutting off circulation there and having that direct contact and conduction as well. So you want to make sure that your gloves aren't too tight to avoid compression. Multiple layers of socks. We see it often. Folks will put on a single pair of socks and a second pair of socks and maybe a third pair of socks. And what's happening is, well, imagine this. You have your foot here. You have your first pair of socks on. That's great. That's just fine. Your second pair of socks goes on. Over top of that now, you're building up bulk, and that bottom layer is now might be a little compressed. If you have a third layer of socks on there, we see this actually fairly often, is that now your foot's going to be really compressed underneath the pressure of all those, and you're going to reduce that insulative quality of those socks below. So try not to build up too many layers of socks. Get one great pair of socks, maybe two, or a liner sock, and use those. You only have so much space also in your stocking foot or in your boot. So if you're trying to shove this ball of socks and foot into that same fixed space now, you might be actually seeing compression in the stocking foot or also in your wading boot as well. So try to avoid compression on all those fronts to help yourself stay warmer. So if you've tried everything and you're like me and your feet are still extremely cold, we have another option for you as well. And I love these things. These are boot foot waders. These are not your standard stocking foot and wading boot. These have a built-in boot. It's a hard shell boot where your foot fits into, and it creates a hard dome over your foot, keeping that insulation pocket, that warm air pocket next to your foot, and it won't get compressed out. These are not your cheap Canadian Tire waders. These are a great option, high quality build, great stability in your boot as well to keep you standing and your ankle support in place. All right, so next up, let's touch on conduction. Now, conduction is the transfer of heat through direct contact. So if you have something that's cold and you're touching it, that's conduction taking place there. Now, If you look at our setups here, we have a few things we can look at, and one that's surprising to a few folks, or a lot of folks, is that it's the studs that are on your boots that can actually draw heat out of your foot. Now, go and test this yourself if you don't believe it, but put one foot onto a metal grate or metal surface, and then the next onto the surface next to it, and see which one's going to get colder. I can almost guarantee you that the foot on the metal surface is going to be way, way, way colder, way faster than the one that's not on that metal surface. Now, your entire wading boot bottom is not covered in metal, mind you, but you do have points there that will draw the heat out. So as much as we love these things for traction, and we encourage you to wear these for traction, because being upright and dry is way better than on the ground and wet, or in the river and wet. So just be mindful that these things might actually cause some of your cold feet problems. Next up is also with contact any metal with your hands. If you're a center pin angler, you're going to find that your hand that's touching a reel is going to get colder way, way quicker. It's just the fact that the metal is drawing heat out of your hand. If you're slowing your spool down, your fingertips too are going to begin contact with the rim of the reel, and you will find that quite cold as well. So padding the back of your reel is not a bad idea, or wearing a nice lofty great glove is going to protect you from the cold of those hard metal elements. So some other great points there. Look at all the other conduction points on your body and in your system, and see if you can eliminate those to stay warmer on the water. Thanks for joining me on part 1 of this 4-part series. Stay tuned to more tips, and hopefully this will give you some ideas on how to stay warmer out there and better understanding of what's making you cold.